I'm sorry, come again.
Live.
I
We
said I
are
hate
now.
that Ty looks. Oh,
Oh, hey y'all.
Well, I'm super excited to be on here tonight. I'm going to check my stream. And yes, we are indeed live. So, friends, feel free to share this to your page, your respective social media platforms. Um, but I'm super excited to be live tonight. Welcome to Watch Your Voice, a podcast for preachers by preachers. We are so delighted to be gathering tonight. Last week, we went live for the very first time. And it was a super fruitful conversation where we talked about preaching during the pandemic. And so tonight, we're going to continue our conversation. And tonight we are ultra blessed because we have a super special guest with us tonight as we talk about building and maintaining a digital faith community, which is super important in this time. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring our special guest, the Right Reverend Dr. Melva Sampson. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
welcome, Dr. Sim.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Sampson, for those of you who are not familiar, which I would be surprised if people don't know who Dr. Sampson is, because Dr. Sampson is famous out here in these streets. But the Right Reverend Dr. Melva Sampson is the Assistant Professor of Preaching and Practical Theology at Wake Forest University School of Divinity, my soon-to-be alma mater in a few days. Praise God.
Praise the Lord.
He is an ordained minister of the Progressive National Baptist Convention and an ordained ruling elder in the Presbyterian Church USA. Her research interests live at the intersections of gender, digital interactive media, performance, and preaching. And the reason why we have her with us tonight is because she is the creator and curator of Pink Robe Chronicles. And I'm going to let Dr. Sampson speak to what Pink Robe Chronicles is and how Pink Robe Chronicles came to be.
Okay, so hey everybody. I hope that you are staying well, staying safe, washing your hands and so forth. And for those who are in the midst of battling this illness, our prayers are absolutely with you, and wanting you to know that we are praying with you and for you. Pink Robe Chronicles. Pink Robe Chronicles is an online platform that centers faith and spirituality and highlights the womanist tenets of radical subjectivity, which essentially means to name oneself for oneself, of critical engagement, that we are always looking at everything, including the biblical text, with a critical eye. Redemptive self-love, which is the idea of loving oneself regardless, and traditional communalism, which means that womanists are interested in the survival of an entire community. And so we come together every Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, every Sunday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, from my Facebook page, Melva Sampson. And from there, I share the broadcast to the Pink Robe Chronicles Facebook page. So if you ever want to go back and just look in our archives, or while you're binging and paying $11.99 for your Netflix, or now it's $15.99, and your Hulus and your Primes and all of those other things, you can toggle on over to Facebook and binge out on Pink Robe Chronicles, where all of the cast are housed there from 2016 up to now. Pink Robe Chronicles started for a couple reasons. One, back in 2016, the live feature had just come. It had just come about for Facebook. I know that Periscope had their live feature via, I think it was at Twitter, in their partnership with Twitter. I don't tweet a lot because back when it was only 144 characters, I always had more than 144 characters to say. So I know you can do more now, but and so I really thought live was obnoxious. I was like, well, why would you want to? I mean, that's just too much access. It's just too much. We don't need to see what everybody's doing at every moment of the day. And then in August 2016, Corinne Gaines, a young African-American woman from Baltimore, was murdered by the Baltimore County Police. Over a series of 2 days, the Baltimore County Police had stopped her and harassed her about her licensure, which she identified as a sovereign citizen. I don't have the time and space here to explain to you what one who identifies as a sovereign citizen is, so I would encourage you to do your research on that. And so, as some of you will remember, the next day they showed up at her home, allegedly with a search warrant, and she was armed. She, ensued her right to bear arms. She was armed. They told her to put her arms down. She told them to put your arms down, and eventually they shot and killed her while she was holding her child. What was interesting for me is that a lot of this was streamed. She was live on Facebook. And I thought, my goodness, like what a stand to take that, possibly this is going to be the end of something. Yet you want to make sure that your story is told through your lens, right? So later on that day, I was so moved. I was so distraught, and I wanted to talk, and there was nobody around. And so I grabbed my cell phone and was like, y'all, I got some feelings. And I began to just pour out my heart and all that I was thinking and feeling. And then the Facebook algorithm the live algorithm was broader. And so it was like 400 people on there. And I was like, is this really 400 people? Like right now it's 400 of you all? That algorithm has since changed. Like I haven't had 400 people since then. But my point is that I just started, I just sort of found an outlet, and I started coming back and being consistent. Around the same time, I was on the staff, volunteer on the staff of a ministry that I cherished, that is responsible for a lot of my consciousness. A situation went down that I'm still not fully clear of, where, a woman went to the pastor and said, I don't want to hear her preach anymore. Like if she preaches anymore, I'm out. And so for me, that was just like, well, let me tell you what we're not going to do, right? What I'm never going to do is be in a position where I'm never that thirsty where I'm going to be in a position where someone is saying they don't want to hear my voice. You know what I mean? While it was hurtful, I knew at that moment, something else had to happen. Now, I still continue to go to church. I still continue to serve in other capacities, but I haven't preached in that pulpit since then.
Wow.
And it was Pink Robe Chronicles was born sort of out of that. There's more to the story, but I'm sure we'll get into that as you ask me more questions. Yeah. But wait, let me say this, that because I want to make sure that I give it to. So Pink Robe Chronicles then becomes a platform that I created and curate to make sure that I had a space to still live out my calling. As a preacher, right? So that, while at times we can be without sanction, we are never without sanctuary, not ever. Right. Yeah. And so for me, the digital space was, oh, okay, I control this, right? I don't have to go through a DS. I don't have to go through a governing board. I don't have to get permission from the denomination, but yet I can say the unction, how the unction came to me. That means I cuss a little bit. I don't always have to stay in this realm. That means, I might stray over here to this tradition and talk a little bit about this. And what I began to notice is that more and more, particularly where my lens had been focused, is Black women, Black preaching women, started to develop their own digital space as a way to curate their voice and make sure that they were still being faithful to the call. So I identify what this space is as a digital hush harbor. For those of you who do not know what a hush harbor is, before the Black church was a physical space, before it was brick and mortar, before your great grandmama and them laid the bricks, put the cornerstone in, before the cement was poured into the foundation, before the carpet was laid, before the pews were carved out, Before all of that, the Black church itself was not an institution, but it was an invisible institution that happened in the bush, in the clearing, in the hush harbor. It was a space where enslaved Africans went to release, to worship the gods they brought with them across the transatlantic, and to be able to use as a cover the Christianity that their slave masters were enforcing upon them, right? They were, all of this commingling and intermingling was happening in the bush. And so a hush harbor was a carved out space where Black folk could go and affirm their gods and their humanity, and disrupt places, spaces, and folk that both literally and figuratively disembodied them. So the digital hush harbor works similarly, and it becomes a carved out space where folk can come, where we can talk stuff, where we can engage. I have to remember I'm on y'all's platform, where we can talk and be respectful, where we can talk about things, where we can release, and where we can honor. And this is space that we carve out so that we can intentionally disrupt those what Patricia Hill Collins, she's a Black feminist sociologist, calls, so we can intentionally disrupt that matrix of domination that is so visible in those oppressive systems like racism and sexism and heterosexism and homophobia and so forth and so on.
My God, today.
I think I really appreciate the metaphor of a digital
Hush harbor.
That is just phenomenal. I haven't connected those dots, so that just blew my mind. But I think my question is, with the use of digital space, it almost seemed, and I think we're all church hoppers on this show. It almost seemed as pastors and ministries are doing kind of conventional, traditional ministry in a new way. And what I heard you say tonight is that you took it one step forward and kind of created these new platforms so that your voice can be heard. What's your opinion on that, and how can ministries kind of like just step all the way out of the box and create a space that is radically inclusive and just whatever the adjective may be for that. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. Shout out to all the truth tellers, the Pink Road Chronicle truth tellers that I see popping up on this pin here. Shout out to you all. Hey, Glency. Hey, Essinam. Hey, Tanya Purdy. James, my response to that is this. I was not setting out to start a church. That's number one. That was the first. Matter of fact, depending on who you talk to, somebody would probably consider me a church outlier. That I'm on the fringe, and then I'm Baptist, so ain't nobody coming for my ordination. It comes wherever I go. So I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, and so that's the first thing for me, is that I wasn't trying to do church.
Right.
I was, yes, trying to have a space where I could, just sort of create and be. But I was also just interested in speaking to the heart of people. And so I think that if people would take themselves out of church, because that's the constrained part, and just think about, how can I create content that uplifts people? Is that echo coming on from my end? Do y'all hear the echo? If you don't hear it, it's fine.
It wasn't you. Yeah, no.
Okay, it's just me then. So sorry y'all for that interruption. So my work is, I honor and really love and really like people who are, have moved their ministries online. I think that they, are innovators, people who have been doing that way before COVID-19, like people who saw that we were moving beyond the VHS. Remember, you used to order your video from church service, and then you start let me tell you how old I am. You used to get the cassette, baby, get the cassette. Then you got the VHS, and then we moved to getting your CD. Then we moved to getting your DVD, right? And so then, let's just take us on through all this little religious media history. I mean, and if we go all the way back before then, since this is the Common Seminary, we could talk about the works of Lerone Martin and his preaching on wax, where we look at the first stages of religion and media, where Black people were preaching on on records called race records on the phonograph, right? And so for me, I think that's good. But my work and my interest is never interested in replicating church in digital space. That there are people who do that. That's not what I do. Meaning, I'm not interested in fully taking a church program and figuring out how to offer all of those pieces. I actually think that's too much. Unless meaning it's one thing for you to be at church, say we're still in physical church, and you have your service online for people to stream. Great. I like that. There are a couple churches that I watch. But in this space, in this very interesting space where we are now, I think where people are getting tripped up is trying to reproduce what was. And if I could just be honest here and free some folk, if we keep saying nothing is going to be the same, why do we keep trying to work the same?
My God, today.
If we keep saying that this is the new normal, why we keep trying to act like it's normal? Why are you trying to have the whole doxology? Why are you trying to have the whole 3-paragraph litany? Why are you trying to figure out how the choir can still sing via Zoom? No, you know what people want to hear right now? Your heart.
Mm-hmm.
They want to hear your heart. They want to hear, and they want to hear honesty. They don't want to hear all this jargon and, these, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, listen, y'all, I'm a little anxious myself, or I'm a little frustrated myself. They want to hear, for me, even, we just moved beyond Resurrection Sunday, right? For me, I was like, I can't get out. Not today. I'm not talking about he got up. I just can't do it. I'm not getting ready to do it. And guess what? The people on my live weren't even interested in hearing that. So we have to move with the time. Yes, it's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. But forevermore right here in 2020 is a pandemic. And so I think that the way, even like, for instance, I saw Pastor Freddie Haynes, whom I love dearly. I thought it was dope how he, instead of, some people gonna get me. I love y'all. And even if you two do it too, I do love y'all. But the whole preaching in the empty sanctuary, I don't get it. It misses me. It misses me. Because again, for me, you're either trying to hold on to what was, because you're not going to tell me it's not one corner in your space. I don't care if you got a studio apartment. You're just not going to tell me it's not one corner in your space where you can let all of the accoutrements go. Listen, where you could just clap your hands and let me see if my little book is still up. It's not over here now. To move my little, I used to have my little hymnal right here on that. Grab your hymnal and sing a song. I don't care how big the ministry is. This is not the time for lights, camera, action. This is the time to low impact. What is the best way I can get straight to the heart of the people? So I loved when I saw Dr. Haynes go up into the balcony of his church. Listen, he dimmed them lights. I said, come on, come on, come on. Because we know ain't nobody in the church. So, and the way y'all be preaching hard too. And ain't nobody in there. Ain't nobody in there. So then the idea though that, well, we want to give people miss the church. And so we want to give them, the opportunity. You miss the church. And there's nothing wrong with missing the church. What I'm saying though is when lives are at stake, your role is to develop sermons, which, and my idea of that is creating content. And where you create that content if we always saying, God is everywhere, God is omnipresent, God could be on the bench in the park, God could be in the wind that blows across the leaves, God is at all places, and if God is indeed everywhere, why are you so tied to that sanctuary? How is it that we create spaces, that we liberate people to make their own sanctuaries? What does it look like for my congregation or a congregation for me to empower them, say, create a sacred space in your place? I don't care, it could be a cardboard box that you put a white paper towel over and a little picture, but what does that mean, right? How do we get people connected to the message and not the building?
I think so.
Preaching all up on y'all stuff.
You're talking real good. With thank you. So I think like my kind of question is, so as we talk about creating a new space, particularly online, where we can sort of be authentic in real ways, how does that move us beyond our traditional conceptions of community, right? Like in the church, in terms of our reach. How does what move us beyond? How are we reframing community in some ways, like particularly for you with your for Pink Road Chronicles? And right now I'm thinking of like Benedict Anderson and Imagine Communities and the work that we're doing in terms of creating a space where people can come together and connect.
I'm not, Janice, are people asking questions? I keep seeing things pop up on my
people are commenting. They're commenting, and we'll get to some questions.
Okay. Eldrick, how am I reframing community? You know what? I don't think I'm reframing community. I think we're being community. I think that we, at least for me, have become free enough to engage in what the Ghanaians, the Akans of Ghana, West Africa, call Sankofa, which we are going back to retrieve what has been misplaced. Many of us come from communities that only survive because of this idea of Ubuntu, which is I am because you are. I can recall my grandmother on Sundays sending me around the neighborhood with plates of food to people who was on the sick and shut-in list. I can recall us having relationships with our neighbors because we sat on the front porch and not on the back deck because we wanted privacy. The next door neighbor or vice versa asking for $5 because little such and such had a field trip the next day, right? I remember when my teacher, my elementary teacher, school teacher, was a member of our church. I remember, the ways in which our communities were so very tight knit. I mean, I grew up. Some of you are from Cleveland. I'm from Pittsburgh. A nice little rival, but a very similar style of working class towns, right? And so for me, I'm not reimagining more than I'm saying, let's go back to who we've always been. Let's go back to who we are. That our concern is if I can reframe your question a little bit, because I think what some people think is, how can you build community in digital space? Like, in what ways does digital space prevent you? Like, we want to do the pass the peace. What about the Harambe moment? What about, we don't get to hug on each other. And, in digital space, you just can't get the same feel. You don't get the same, that just, people can't really articulate it. That's because they never tried it. You can't really get the, you just don't. And, Pink Road Chronicles dispels that every time. Untrue. Untrue, because what creates the community? The authenticity of the being who's creating the content connects with the authenticity of the people who are engaging the content. And what is at the source of the content? It's the gospel message. Again, moving beyond all of the bells and whistles and all of the titles we give it, all we simply doing is talking. We are engaging, and people are responding to the engagement. We are in our engagement, we are telling the truth. And when we tell the truth, that perks something up in another person because they've been dying to hear that truth. And what happens when you move from the clearing to brick and mortar is you move from self-governance to politics.
Mm.
So now we got the politics. We moved from mutual aid, right? During the Great Migration, when Black folk were coming from the South to all points North, Midwest, and far West, right? They were coming up. The first place they would stop is at a church. Why? Because they need to see what's on the board. Who has the room to rent? Who has the day jobs? Who has the mutual aid societies? But now I got to look at your tithing record. I got to see if you have tithed enough. How much are you a member? When is the last time you came? I got to send this through the community. You know what I mean? And so I'm not against process. Hear me, because process is good and process is necessary. I'm really, I guess, talking about in these peculiar times, the processes that we are in, the processes that we are focused on, I don't necessarily think are the most important processes. Now, let me put myself out there for a moment of transparency to absolutely say, people will say, well, she's not a pastor of a brick and mortar church. And so for real, she, you know, her lens is skewed. Agreed. Like, you're not going to get any, see, yeah, like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't pay a mortgage on the church. Nope. Ain't interested, right? I don't, you know, there are certain things I don't do that aren't, because I don't have that issue. But what I do, or what we do, because I don't do anything, what we do is we make sure we take care of one another. I'm doing prayer calls. People showing up in my inbox asking me questions or asking for prayer. People come to our community with financial needs, and we are addressing them and we are attending to them. Our ministry and even the fact that I just called it ministry right now is a big thing, because I've been so hesitant, and those of you who are part of our community will tell you I've been hesitant to name it that, although that is what we do, because I don't want to keep anybody out. And you know, there are these buzzwords, church are not buzzwords, these loaded words, triggering words. Church is one, a ministry is next. Our community is not just Christian people. We have Muslim people in our community. We have people who practice African spiritual traditions in our community. But guess what? Most Sundays, I'm coming from a scripture. Most Sundays, I am centering a gospel message. And I'm not changing it. I'm not saying, okay, so I'm saying this is what this is, but I believe it's the community and it's the truth that's being spoken that really, you know, invites people to come forth and to be, you know what I mean? Like, there are very few spaces, and even in church, and I want to just let me say this, where folks can be, because I'm going to tell you, marginalized bodies, and specifically for me, from my social location, Black women's bodies aren't safe in Black churches. And that's just that. Fight me on that. They are not safe. There is a constant, I don't care how progressive a pastor is, and even a male pastor, there are politics deeply embedded in Black church that do not fully honor Black women and Black women's bodies. There are ways and examples that are used in preaching that dehumanize Black women. So if every time we're talking about, we in a sermon and we say, you know, stuff like, you know, when your wife, you know, she act like she don't, but you don't ever follow it up with a similar example that's opposite, that's lifting up the, we don't do that. There are ways in which we use examples that demonize Black women, that place them in positions, and then we misuse, you know, we'll take Jezebel, we'll take we'll always preach from Esther and never preach from Vashti. You know, we will never preach the rape of Tamar, but we'll always lift up, you know, Mary, who was a young girl. You know, we'll always lift up Elizabeth, but we'll never really lift up Rahab. We'll always talk about the woman that Jesus encounters at the well, and talk about, we'll key in on that verse, and she had 5, and the one she with, it's not a safe space. It's not a safe space, because our hermeneutic, our interpretation is tainted. So what does it look like then for us to come to a space, not that digital, because I don't want to romanticize digital space, but at least the being, it is my hope that the being who is curating. So there are three folk I want to lift up. One is if you all don't follow Pastor Levon Proverbs, that's her name on Facebook. I think her name on Twitter is Pastor Bay, who is a sex and body positive pastor, who has a phenomenal ministry, and curates. She has an online platform called We Are Surthrivers, and it is for survivors or surthrivers, which is surviving and thriving joined together, of childhood sexual violence and or violence done by males. And these are conversations that, these are sermons that we don't hear, and these are conversations that we don't often have, but yet these statistics are through the roof in terms of how many people have experienced this, right? There's The Gathering, a womanist church in Dallas, Texas, co-pastored by two women, Reverend Dr. Iris Session and Reverend Camila Hall. While they are in Dallas, Texas, they stream live on Facebook every Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time. They are streaming, and they are doing innovative thing. They do something at the end of every service called Talk Back to the Text. When is the last time one of us, when we finish preaching, not did a talk back to the text in the pastor's office with all the associate ministers, but after the not after the benediction has been done, but as a part of the service, invites the congregation to talk back to the text. What did you hear? What was troubling? What was promising? And then there's a slew. There's Nichelle Guidry, Reverend Dr. Dean Nichelle Guidry. She and Reverend Dr. Dominique Robinson are just created something called the Sister Deans that they're doing on Sundays at 3 on Instagram. And then Nichelle also has her podcast, Modern Faith. Delesalyn Kennebrew, who does something on Thursday evenings called The Living Room. Carmen Means of The Movement, who does Sundays at 10:30. I mean, this list could go on, but now, who was I saying? These are all women who either had to go make their space and start their own church, like The Gathering started their own church, and then their denomination picked them up, or had to make and or create space because their voice wasn't welcome.
Jesus. Wow. Dr. Sampson, you talked about this level of community, and I would name it a type of pastoral care. For the purpose of inviting Jasmine's question into the conversation, she says, I wonder how this translates into a way of providing pastoral care digitally. Like, what would you say to that?
How what translates? Community or curating digital spaces?
How do we offer pastoral care digitally? Like, now pastors can't drive out to go, well, they're driving out, but they can't get that face-to-face contact like normal. And they still have people to care for and who want to see and hear from their pastors. So like, what are some like practical things that a pastor could do, or what are your thoughts about like providing pastoral care when we're limited for the most part to digital space?
You know who's doing this well? Reverend Courtney Clayton Jenkins of South Euclid Church. Is that UCC? South Euclid United Church of Christ. Shout out to you, Reverend Courtney. Is doing this very well. She has different tiers of what I call digital participation. So if you have a smartphone, then you can, click into the Zoom. If you don't have a smartphone, but you have a phone, then you can call into the conference call line. If that is too cumbersome, there is, a text, right? A member of my, I teach, I've been teaching this class called Preaching from the Margins to a cohort of 12 United Methodist pastors in the Western North Carolina conference. And one of those pastors said to me, and this was phenomenal. She said, you know what we do? She said that she does all of the above, the Zoom and the conference call, but that a week, so she has to plan so that she sends out her sermon and whatever liturgy she's using maybe on Wednesday, so that they'll have it by Saturday, so that if they are not able to get on any of those things, they can do a self-guided. So they have the manuscript of the sermon, they have the liturgy or the litany, and the other liturgy, excuse me, and the other liturgy, like say last Sunday was first Sunday. And I thought, now that's it right there. So you have covered all bases, right? You put it in the mail. You or somebody can read it to you. Conference call. I'm gonna pick up this phone, and my voice is gonna be on the other end. Digital space, and then the other thing is like at school we have digital office hours. So you can get a Zoom link attached to, or a hyperlink attached to your calendar for those who are tech savvy, and they can, however you do that, they click on that and they put their name, and you're there waiting for them at that particular time, so they have the one-on-one meeting with you. And here's the thing, I know this could all be overwhelming, especially if this is not your wheelhouse. Because I won't suggest that a lot of this is my wheelhouse, but I'm willing to learn. The other thing is, guess what? There are people out there in your ministry for whom this is their wheelhouse. Another congregation that is doing this well, pastoral care via religious education, is the Ray of Hope Community Church in Nashville, Tennessee, with the Reverend Doctors, Reverend Dr. Renita Weems and Reverend Martin Espinoza. They are doing this thing. I was just in there. They had a religious education Wednesday. And on Wednesday, you click on their Zoom, and then they put you into breakout rooms depending on the class that you said you wanted to take. They offered 3 courses, 1-hour courses. Like one was on creative writing in the pandemic, communication in the pandemic, and then I think maybe self-care. Reverend Espinosa opened up with a prayer, and then everybody went out into their breakout rooms. I had a phenomenal class. And then within 5 minutes of the class left, everybody came to the larger Zoom room. And so my point is that there are people there who are wanting to help you and who can do it, because many people do this for their corporate jobs, right? And so these people are part of your congregation. So I say that the way that you care for people, after you do, you're also going to have to exegete your congregation. Exegete is the word that means to read out. You're going to have to read out who is in your congregation. What is the demographic of my congregation? Maybe Zoom is not the best platform because my congregation is aged this way, or my congregation falls victim to the digital divide. And so what's going to be best for them, whether they got a Boost, a T-Mobile, a Verizon, a Galaxy, an iPhone, that conference call is what's going to be best for us. And let me tell you something, prior to Pink Road Chronicles in 2012, Reverend Camila and I started, we had a family conference call. We still have this call line. And our family used to do these meetings like once a month. We just get on, say, hey. And we got on one time because someone was in need of prayer. And we pray down heaven. And then afterwards, a family member was like, can we come back together next week? And first we were like, that's a little close. Like, come on now, we just prayed. I mean, let this prayer work first, But we did. We came back the next week, and they kept asking us to come back every week. And then they started inviting their coworkers and their friends. And before you know it, we had this ministry called The Shift. And The Shift was a prayer line that happened every Monday night. Get this, at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock on a Monday night. Upwards to like 75 people would be on this conference call line with us praying and just really, sitting with people. So I think those are just a few ways, diversifying the way that exegeting your congregation based on the data you received on who's in your congregation and who has access to what. That might mean you need to do a survey, whether you actually do a survey like SurveyMonkey, or whether you just get to calling people, old school phone tree, to see where people are. What level of access do you have? Do you have Wi-Fi or not? Maybe you need to see which one of your congregational folks have who work for corporations. When we have all these conferences, child, and everybody who work for the the shampoo company got miniature shampoos. They got miniature, ask those people if they, who works for a telecommunications company that has some hot spots. Because maybe they can donate some hotspots to your congregation. So the ways to engage in self-care in pastoral care are endless. The main thing here is contact. People want to be contacted. They want to know that right now, in the midst of this, they are not alone, and that they have a community. They have a team, people, and it doesn't have to be just you. And the people who be like, "No, I want the pastor to call me." Grow up. Okay, the pastor got a whole flock. It's not just you, and that's why the pastor has a team and they are representations of the pastor. As soon as the pastor is able to catch the pastor's breath from dealing with all of the things that the pastor is dealing with, the pastor gonna come see you. But in the meantime, you got Janice. Right. And Janice has been vetted, and Janice has been trained, and Janice is anointed, and Janice is called, and we entrust Janice as an arm of this church to be able to give you what you need.
That's good. That's so good. Todd, James, either if you have a question, we got some.
Sure, I want to lift this this other question by Jasmine Patrice. She's asking, where did it go? Is there a place that they could find these resources? And maybe what we should do is maybe get with Dr. Sampson so that we might compile these resources and offer it from our platform so that people might be able to tune in to the Sister Deans and the Gathering and all of these services that she mentioned. But Dr. Sampson, is there a place that people can go to kind of like get resources to, one, kind of help them shape their online presence, and then two, to tune in to some of these, some of the platforms that you named tonight?
There's not one place. I know my platform is in the us to continue surfing, right? As much as we flip through things, and so when you see something and you see that's good, I share it. Hey, if you're looking for such and such, this is a good idea right here. They're doing it well, right? And so so you can start here. I just gave you put in your search bar Reverend Courtney Clayton Jenkins, or go to Euclid. Is it Euclid Street, y'all? Is it I think it's Euclid Street, South Euclid Avenue, and I think United Church of Christ in Cleveland, Ohio, and go to their website and browse around on their Facebook, on their webpage, and then look at her. If you're not friends with her, request being her friend. See what she's doing. See how she's doing it. Same thing with the other person I mentioned, Lyvonne, Lyvonne Proverbs. As a matter of fact, Lyvonne Proverbs just did an amazing teaching on Friday, this past Friday, that I reposted and said every Black church pastor needs to listen and sit with the hard truth in this message. And it's about Mother's Day. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I want you to go to her page and to listen with an attentive ear. She's calling Black church to the carpet about the ways that we talk about Mother's Day in a very one-sided and triggering way. And so, yeah, when you find something, share it, right? So that other folks can know. In terms of what people can read, and this is why my work is so important. The work that I'm writing on, now is important, but even the work beyond that becomes important. There aren't any how-to books right now, not in ministries. People probably sitting at home trying to write them right now. But there aren't, based on their experience, I'm coming out of this with something. I'm going to have me, I imagine. So there aren't too many resources that I know of right now, sort of like, how to do this in 5 ways, sort of kind of like the self-help work. They're mainly theoretical. But in my class that I teach at Wake, that some on this live have participated in, including Janice, it's called Podcast, Vlogs, and Live Streams. I don't know if you have your book close to you, Janice.
I do. That's a good
and mine is across my room, but it's called Podcast, Vlogs, and Live Streams. And it's called that particularly for this reason, because proclamation in the digital age is not just solely happening in brick and mortar. It's happening via podcast. It's happening via this live stream. It's happening via vlogs. And we have to expand our idea of ministry and proclamation and or preaching. So the book that we use is not a ministry book at all. Although Joe has some germinal nuggets, meaning that it's called Content, Content Inc. Well, Jasmine, you were in that class, so you should know what that book is. It's called Content Inc. And Content Inc., while it is not a book designed for ministers, it absolutely is a book about content and branding and entrepreneurship. Now, folks gonna get mad and okay, but let me tell you something. You an entrepreneur if you a pastor. That's what you are, for one of two reasons. Either A, you don't make enough to be able to hold that position as your only job. So you out here bivocational and figuring out, ways to make it. And B, because you are constantly thinking, how to market your church, how to market your new program, your latest conference, we're going to add this service. This is to get in the more contemporary service. And the question that's forever on some folks' minds is how to get the millennials to come back. Listen, you better be thinking about how to get Gen X to come back. That's what you need to be thinking. That's who got the checkbook right now. So what happens in Content Inc. is what Joe Pulizzi, the author's name is Joe Pulizzi, P-U-I-L-I-Z-Z. Just Google Content Inc. What Joe is saying is, listen, y'all, what's your thing? What is it that you do? Now, if Janice has been asked this question, but James and Eldrick, if I ask you right now, beyond you being called to be a pastor, beyond you being called to preach, if I said to you, what's your niche? What's your thing? What you do? For some, they would be like, ooh. Well, we would get to doing, and I'm only talking because this is, well, I can't really explain. So this is it right here. So what Joe Pulizzi is saying is that you're not clear on your content. And the way that you get clear on your content is you have to identify, and it's called the Content Inc. model. And Joe, I hope you see me this because I hype you up a lot. I should get a check for this. But what Joe Pulizzi would say is, on one side, you need to have your skills, what you're skilled at doing, your professional or personal skills. And on the other side is what you're knowledgeable about. Like what do you know that nobody else like? So maybe you are a sports buff. And maybe like the most obscure sports facts that nobody else knows, right? That's what you're knowledgeable about. But maybe what you're skilled at is maybe you're an artist. Maybe you're skilled at what's it called, Janice? Web design. Maybe you're skilled at web design, right? That's your hard skill. And what your knowledge is obscure sports facts, right? When you merge those together, when you place those together, what should emerge for you is what's called a sweet spot. So then you might say, what a sweet spot for me is a podcast that teaches people how to do web design, while we can also share these obscure sports facts. That's a niche, because everybody has a podcast. And while you might think you're the only one who knows these obscure sports facts, there's always somebody next to you who knows the same thing. So the idea is figuring out what you're skilled at and what you're knowledgeable about, and allowing that sweet spot to emerge. And when you let that emerge, then that will tell you how you need to move forward. So then based on this means that this is the type of content that I should be producing. So this means that even where I know the gospel message is my primary information on this digital space, this means that if Common Seminary is for Common Seminary, then I don't need to be posting TikTok videos on Common Seminary. I don't need to post personal messages from Janice on Common Seminary. Common Seminary is for Common Seminary content, right? And once you define what Common Seminary content is, then you develop your content calendar. Who do we want on Common Seminary? What themes are we going to talk about on Common Seminary? And then you take it one step further. Now, how are we going to monetize Common Seminary? Yeah, that's important because, you know, folks, church folk, y'all, they kill me. We get a little iffy when we start talking about money, but everybody going to go raise that offering and raise that tithe. Friend, how you going to monetize this? Why do you need to? Because this costs money. The upkeep of your hardware costs money. The purchasing of your ring lights, the purchasing of your system so you can muffle out sound, and then creating a level of bank where you can be able to help people who need help when the time. Ministry is money. Yeah. And for those of you who are students on here, to simply eat.
My God, today.
I mean, there go Colin Pugh. Look, Colin. Hey.
I'm trying to get one of these
for your website to come up.
We were just talking about this. I need one of these shirts, okay? I'm fiending. I'm thirsty, okay? I digress.
Colin Pugh. So to make a point, Colin Pugh saw a gap. There was at one time, I think it's resurging now, a Black seminarian group. And back in around 2012, I think it was Whitney Bond who started, who there were sweatshirts and it had like a fist in the middle and it was Black seminarian. And then for whatever reasons, it all fell to the side. And Colin Pugh, I think, saw the gap, right? And found a sweet spot and said, oh, let me bring this Black seminarian back. But not only did he bring it back, he said, I'm going to do the relaunch at the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. Genius. Why? Because there's a whole seminarian track at so it's not, my point is, friends, it's not wrong for you to use these models to think through how you want to maintain your relevancy. It's not problematic. It is not. It is not. Like, you have to think beyond the very limited box that human beings have placed us in. If the earth is God's and the fullness, Dr. Marsha Clinkscales, oh my God. I know this is y'all's platform, but can I just have 1 minute?
Go ahead.
I went to seminary because of Dr. Marsha Clinkscales.
Wow.
I was living in DC, and I was living in DC. Somebody must need to hear this. I was living in DC. I was working for a nonprofit. I was working on Capitol Hill. I was working for a member, and then I was working for an NGO a PAC, and then I was working for a nonprofit educational institution. And my mentor at the time had suddenly died, had a heart attack and died. And as God would have it, Dr. Clinkscales is the one who brought Dr. Wells into our Department of Human Communication Studies at Howard University. Long story short, she ended up, I was saying randomly then, but we know these things like these are not random. She ended up being in, she was a professor in this nonprofit, and I went, somebody said we needed to meet, and I went to her because I was wrestling with seminary. I was wrestling with space. Again, like, I just don't feel like I'm the typical, I don't know, but I feel like this thing to go to seminary, but I don't really know what they do there. Like, what is that? Is that like Sunday school? Like, what we gonna do when we get there? Right. And it's not, for those of you who are wondering, it is absolutely not. But it was Dr. C who told me, I went to her and said, somebody directed me to come talk to you. And she said, you already know what to do. You want me to confirm it, but you need to trust the confirmation in your own soul. Mic drop. And so she sent me down to Candler, to Emory, to do a visit, and I did my visit, and I woke up the next day and said, this is where I'm supposed to be. And really that set me on this trajectory of doing what I'm doing now. Really started then. So shout out to you, shouts out to you, Dr. C. Yeah, thank you for letting me say that.
I just want to highlight again the definitely not Sunday school. Praise God.
It's definitely not Sunday school. You know what I mean? It's definitely not Sunday school, but it's so necessary though, right? And I think what you are doing with this common seminary is important too, because we do as academicians and scholars, I think we can be in our head a little too high and a little too much. And, you know, how do we know that? You know, when I'm reading sentences that are like 4 lines long, that are no longer simple, but complex compound, you know, when I'm reading, you know, sometimes we talk a lot with a lot of the jargon, right? There are ways, and so my monitor is, will my grandmother understand this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Will deacon such and such get this? Will mother such and such? Will the youngster, you know, in middle school? And so there's a way in which we have to bring it all the way down. Bringing something down does not impact the integrity of the content. Doesn't do that. But what it does do is makes it accessible. That's why I'm a practical theologian, because I'm interested in making it accessible. I need you to get what I'm saying, and I need you to understand it, and I need to say it in a way that connects with you. I need you to understand, you know, on Pink Road Chronicles on Sunday, the reason why people are saying, you know, I just don't know how you just so relatable. I'm relatable because I really don't talk about stuff that I ain't been through. Anything that I'm preaching on, anything is because I know it intimately. Yeah. It's because I'm not finna tell you that, you know, we gonna get through this if I don't know what getting through something is. You know what I mean? I'm not. And there are ways in which we as preachers and those who are pastors have to realize when we feel like people are deifying us and have us on a pedestal, you know, we can respond to that with humility, but we shouldn't want to stay there. Because that's room for a letdown. You need to want to come down to people. You are a leader. You are the leader. So you should be set apart. Yeah, there's a level of set apartness, but you got to be careful because that set apartness and that ego could grow up in that set apartness and make you feel that you are higher than you really are. And so there are ways in which for those, at least I can say, who are called to preach, you know who called you to preach? Yes, God did, but it was your community. I don't know what you all do in Methodism. But let me tell you about that Baptist church. It's the community who acknowledges your call. It's the community who identifies and say, that baby is called right there. Yeah, we're going to support that. It's not just the deacons who are voting, but then the vote turns to the community. Can I get a motion? Can somebody lift a motion? Do we believe and or do we see? So we are called because the community sees something, has identified something in us. And so as long, back to your question, Eldrick, as long as we are doing whatever we're doing with the community in mind, it's always going to be good. Not for, because I want to come out, you know, I went to seminary with folks like, because, you know, I'm called to mega ministry. What is, I can't find that nowhere in the text. What do you mean? What is that? I mean, what do you mean? I'm called to mega church ministry. What? And for me, for my interpretation of the gospel, that's so far away from, you know, when I'm thinking, you know, my interpretations are influenced by so many. I mean, the first thing that's coming to mind for me is Aubrey Hendricks and the Politics of Jesus. You know, that's so far from what this work is. And so, you know, if we even look at digital ministry as a way of kind of sort of returning to get what was, these churches were in homes, in intentional communities, and that's what digital spaces are, intentional communities.
Amen. Well, we are coming up on the hour mark, but before we close out of here, I want to name that a few weeks ago, or maybe even over a month ago, an article came out alerting us that somebody's writing books. Amen. And so Dr. Sampson, could you speak a little bit about what we can expect from you, and then tell the people how they can connect with you online, and then we'll call it a night.
Amen. That's all your question. Nobody else had no questions, so we just out of time. We out of time. I don't want to. Y'all can come over to my page. Maybe I'll go live for a few minutes on my page for you all. If you still want to engage, I'll jump on right quick. Melva Sampson, if we're not already friends, answer. So yes, thank you, Janice. I received a Louisville Institute Louisville Institute Grant Award for people of color who are writing their first book. And that would be me. So I'm one of 3. You know who else got one of these, Janice? Is Dr. Eric Estrada.
Did he really?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that's
So it's me, Dr. Estrada, and I believe Dr. Helen Kim from Emory. And so 3 of us received this award. Shout out to them. I received it to work on my manuscript called Going Live, Black Preaching Women in the Digital Age. I'm just going to read you what my little statement is here so that it's clear and cut, which is that my work argues that Black preaching women are making use of network space to circumvent, interlace oppressive religious structures and theologies. Acting as digital griots, these Black preaching women are deploying live streams as digital hush harbors in ways which are challenging traditional hierarchies, Black church authority, and changing the nature of religious space. So that is the work that I will be working on for the next year. I am technically on sabbatical right now because all my grades are in and classes are over. So glory. You can connect with me. Melva Sampson is my Facebook name. Melva Sampson is also my Instagram name. ML Sampson is my Twitter name. Pink Robe Chronicles is the Facebook page for Pink Robe Chronicles. If you just want to go surf and just sort of see what it is, I really encourage you though to join us live. There's nothing like the Pink Robe Chronicles live experience. For those of you who have experienced it, shout out to you. There's just nothing. It's an organic sharing between me and the community. I have seen things happen on there that I have also seen in face-to-face church service, right? And when I say seen, certainly I can't see the people, but the people are engaging by what they're typing and the responses. It is a very special community. It is a very, very, very special, nothing at all like PRC. Love you, Shannon. So I invite you all to join us this Sunday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch the rebroadcast on the Pink Robe Chronicles Facebook page. Thank you to all 3 of you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Dr.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for being here and joining us.
Thank you.
Well, James, would you mind praying us out?
Yes, Dr. Sampson, thank you so much for sharing your gifts and graces with us and your knowledge and being your unique, wonderful, and I've been sitting here just trying to think of an adjective. This is my first time encountering you, and
I told y'all, yo, we're never gonna be the same.
I've been fed spiritually and energized, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to Amazon right now and get this Content Inc. and I'm gonna incorporate everything I've heard. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a student of your wisdom tonight. Let us pray. God, we give you thanks and praise for the wonderful gift of life, your grace and your mercy that has been new every morning during this COVID-19 pandemic. And we thank you for this wonderful gift that you have given us named Dr. Melva Sampson. And oh God, as she has poured out to us tonight, we pray that you will fill her back in, allow her to dig deeper in your deep chest of wisdom so that she might emerge to be not only just a leader and a prophet to us, but as a mother who nourishes children to their best selves. God, we thank you for the opportunity to go live tonight, and we pray that you will continue to lead and guide us to show us how to give the best resources to your children. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Redeemer. Amen.
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 God bless y'all. Y'all doing good
Bye,
work.
y'all.
Thank you, Dr. Sampson.
Y'all doing good work. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.